Where is the wise man? Where is the scholar? Where is the philosopher of this age? Get down! Baltimore!
What are they getting?
Everything out of me. They gonna get a Super Bowl out of me. Believe that. Believe that.
All right, welcome on back to another edition of the Baltimore Beatdown podcast. It is Wednesday night. Lucky lefty, I expect the 7-7, July 7th, 2022. Wednesday, my dudes. My name is Jake Luke, and I am joined on my screen by a familiar face. Been a little bit, been a little while, but Spenny's at the beach, so we're taking him out of the bullpen. It's Vasily Larikos. How's it going, Chef?
Not too bad, brother. Good to see you. It's actually Thursday for the record. But, you get your days confused in the summertime. It happens to everybody.
You do. It's the dog days of summer. I've told you I've been pulling some 10-hour days over at the office. Not to brag, little grind time situation for your boy. So, I'm a little scrambled up, and it happens. It's kind of like when Dwight thinks that it's Friday, but it's actually Thursday, and then Jim pranks him into thinking that it's actually Friday. So he comes in late the next Friday. It's almost like that, but better because I thought it was the day before. So, good place to start.
Closer to the weekend.
Yeah, it is closer to the weekend. It's Friday Eve, little bullshit office parlance. You like that? Friday Eve, happy Friday, all that stuff?
Yeah, I can. It's okay. I can live with it. Not my favorite.
Yeah, take it or leave it. It's case of the Mondays. It's in that same vein, I think.
No doubt. I definitely prefer Friday Eve or Happy Friday to case of the Mondays.
Yeah, there's the connotation there for sure. But how's everything else going? How we feeling about the state of things, the state of the Ravens? You're always very active on social media, active in the Slack chat, hashing things out. How we feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. I think they have a puncher's chance on paper as they stack up to what's a really loaded, top-heavy, strong-looking AFC conference as a whole right now. I think there's one more move to be made. We don't have to dive into that now. I think everybody knows what we're talking about, a position that's been their Achilles heel for a couple seasons, not including last season, but it seems like they took a little step backwards there. But I feel pretty good. I think it's coming together. Good to see Lamar packing on some muscle, ready to earn that big, huge contract. And I'm really excited about this defense for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you. You mentioned a couple things there that I like, and I'm pretty much in lockstep with you on where they're at right now. I think they do need to make a move at that wide receiver position to your point that you alluded to. But you mentioned that defense that you're excited about, and I guess we can just kind of start right there with some of the news today that kind of just came out as I was preparing to leave the office, actually. Mr. Justin Houston, outside linebacker, returning to the Ravens on a one-year deal worth up to $4 million. I think 14th in pass rush win rate for outside linebackers last season in the NFL, 4.5 sacks, 17 quarterback hits, and a forced fumble. Sneaky prolific, and apparently a great presence in that locker room. Just kind of that calming veteran that they need, who still can really play at a high level. How you feeling about this move?
Fantastic. Great move. Really something that I had hoped for when the offseason began. Yes, his numbers did not necessarily reflect the impact he had on the field, because there were some vulnerabilities specifically on the defensive line, allowing the quarterbacks to step up, and also safeties having a hard time covering players in the middle of the field. So now that those two areas are bolstered, I think the outside linebackers should really have a much better chance to rack up some sack numbers. But Houston's a great player, taking the young players under his wing, teaching them technique. And they needed a guy, right? Because obviously always entrenched, and Houston is most likely to be the week one starter unless Tyus Bowser is ready. I think Bowser may be ready sooner than some think, maybe by the end of September. Going off the Terrell Suggs timeline, those super freaky athletes sometimes seem to heal faster than other guys. But once everybody gets together, I think this outside linebacker group is going to be really strong. And the defense overall, it really has all the pieces to have a top three unit.
Yeah, it just feels like a situation where it's kind of a cauldron of things that are still going to be sort of brewing together even as the season starts. You mentioned Tyus Bowser, and we don't totally know the timeline yet, but it feels like he's going to be ahead of schedule and be ready to go a little bit earlier. And then you got a wild card in David Ojabo, who might be ready halfway through the season or so, maybe a little bit longer than that, but that's the optimistic timeline. Those two guys are hopefully going to come in and inject a lot of juice into the pass rush. But in the time being, I think you really did need a presence like this, and it's one that you know very well. You can count on. He wanted to come here last season ahead of the year, so great to have him back. Maybe he'll finish his career here, maybe not. We'll see what happens for the long term, but back in the fold for another year just in Houston. So very, very nice to see that move. Anything else on this before we jump?
Just looking at it as a whole, Dalen Hayes, also, I think with the three of them, you're ready for week one. And there's a couple other depth guys, and you might want to try to find a guy that may be a little bit better setting the edge. But once Ojabo and Bowser and Houston and Owe are all ready to go, I mean, that's the best outside linebacker core they've had since that 18 season when they had Judon and Za'Darius and Suggs on the field at the same time.
Yeah, and all those young guys seem to really love him. You got, I think it was Owe tweeted he might have Instagrammed like Yoda just as his Instagram story because he thinks that, or he looks at Houston as kind of like the Yoda figure for all the young Jedi amongst that outside linebacker crew. So yeah, just a really cool dynamic with those not just the two young guys, but you mentioned Dalen Hayes there, who I like a lot as well. And then he's just sort of that elder statesman there, that guy who's kind of going to just right the ship and keep things rolling for the time being, while those two other guys are trying to come back healthy. So just a very stable move, not too expensive, which I know we're both always pretty worried about. And just kind of the move that needed to be made. So looking good at this outside linebacker core, at least for the long term, and this helps in the short term as well. But outside of Baltimore, a little bit of an interesting move made, and interesting in the context of like, this goes back so many months and there's so many layers to it with the Browns and Baker Mayfield, where you almost forget about some of the shit that has gone down between these two parties, and seeing it kind of come to this sort of not a bang but a whimper type end between the two of them after he gets selected first overall with all this, I don't want to say all this controversy, but he was a controversial first overall pick, I think. And I think he went out there and he played maybe above some people's expectations, and he brought the Browns to relevance. I think they were probably headed there, or to at least some semblance of there with or without him. But I think he stabilized things, really. He went in there, he got them a playoff win. And then last year, just kind of seemingly out of nowhere, injuries and just this sort of unexplainable acrimony between him and the head coach, who were so prolific together the year prior. He's playing through that non-injured throwing shoulder, and it just apparently there's leaks coming out that him and Kevin Stefanski had just stopped getting along for whatever reason. So they trade for Deshaun Watson. They say that they wanted to get an adult in the room, which is still maybe my favorite thing that's like ever happened. Like I can't get over how much I love that. So they got an adult in the room, and that Mr. Very stable genius Deshaun Watson, and now Baker Mayfield was kind of on the outs. And, it was the question of, are they going to roster him? Are they going to have to carry that $20 million salary? What are they going to do with him? And there had been dalliances all offseason with teams like the Seahawks. The Panthers said, and he, I guess, said that there was mutual disinterest a couple months ago, that he didn't want him. He didn't want to go there. Robbie Anderson is tweeting like he doesn't want him. And then, of course, here we are. They, draft Matt Corral. They've got Sam Darnold still in the building, but I guess David Tepper is consumed by that drive to find a franchise quarterback, like many owners are. So they swing a 2024 conditional, I believe it was a 5th round pick.
5th, yes.
5th, yeah. The Panthers will pay $4.85 million from Mayfield's salary, while the Browns will still pay $10.5 million. Of course, told ESPN's Adam Schefter. So depending on what happens here with Deshaun Watson, this is kind of disastrous to me. I mean, like, they had to get rid of him. I get it, but like, it could not have been done in a less clunky way than this.
Well, they boxed themselves in. And took away any leverage they had for a trade. And I think Baker took a $3 or $4 million haircut just to be able to go there. To Garnett's point, now he gets to battle Sam Darnold. Maybe they could add Josh Rosen to the training camp battle and really decide who should have been that.
A little busy these days, or
to see who's really should have been the number one pick in that draft class that included Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen. But I think it was a successful gamble for Cleveland to take. I still remember that game. He came in, I think it was a Thursday night or Sunday night, and I can't recall, but he made his first appearance to led them to a comeback victory. He notched them then their first playoff victory in who knows how long. But, he's more of a system quarterback. You're surrounded by playmakers, wide receiver, one of probably the best or top 2 offensive lines in the league, the best backfield, and he's still not getting it done. So, I'm glad that it being a divisional rival with Cleveland, it's good that they didn't get a second-round pick or a third-round pick or something better, and they're going to have to carry that cap hit. So, it depends on Watson. Who knows what's going on with that mess? Josina Anderson was putting out some intel today that led me to believe that the suspension may be much more minimal than some are expecting.
Yeah, that did kind of come out at an interesting time when some of these I think judicial reviews are going on surrounding all this stuff, and it sounds to me like what I'm expecting is somewhere in the middle of what people are thinking, because there have been things floated that like, oh, the NFL wants to suspend him an entire year. They want to make like this Trevor Bauer statement against him and all that kind of stuff. And I was thinking like I wish for, I guess, morality's sake that would happen, but this is a business and probably they're going to have to find a way to get him on the field at some point in 2022. So now that you've got this coming out where there's sort of this ideation that he not only could see the field, but he could miss very minimal games. I think what they're probably trying to do, if they have any say in this, I know it's like a kind of review process. I think what they might be trying to do is kind of, I swear to God, they're trying to massage the it came to me. I had to say it. And yeah, so they're trying to sort of work their way through this, wherein
finesse.
They're trying to finesse the situation when they say it's going to be less, and then it winds up being like 8 or 9 games or something like that. So it's like a nice middle ground. He misses half the season, that kind of thing. So very smooth job by me to kind of put my thoughts out there that I think he's probably going to miss half the year or so. They've got Jacoby Brissett in the building. Jimmy Garoppolo weirdly still floating out there. I don't know if he'd want to go there to kind of just keep the seat warm for him for a half a year or so. I mean, what are your thoughts on where the Browns are at right now? Because they've got a strong roster, but this is such a big question mark for so many reasons. Like, it doesn't even seem like it might be fully resolved when he's back on the field with all the reports that continue to come out.
Sure. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to opine on the morality of the situation or anything. I wasn't there. Certainly doesn't look too good, but there's been some conflicting reports. Anyway, I think that they were planning to roll with Brissett. And honestly, with a roster that talented, Brissett can probably win them some games. Baker, what's the drop off from injured Baker to Brissett? Maybe not too far, but Jimmy G's an interesting idea there. I didn't think of that necessarily. I think he'd be a pretty good fit in that system as a bridge guy.
Yeah, I could definitely see it being a good fit. I would be curious on it for Jimmy G's part, but Brissett too. I mean, he's fine. I feel like he's maybe declined the last couple of years that he's seen action. He's obviously not like a 17 game starter type guy, or 18 game, I guess, starter type guy at this point in his career. I think he wasn't like great with the Dolphins, I don't think either. I think it got to the point where Tua came back, because didn't he start that game against the Ravens, and then Tua did the thing every backup quarterback, whoever comes in against the Ravens, does, where he like wills them to victory. So I think Brissett has kind of looked a little rough to me the last couple times I've watched him. It's very anecdotal, but I'm not super confident in him. I just don't really love the lack of mobility, I guess, and sort of the scattershot arm. But who knows? Kevin Stefanski, quarterback whisperer, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's for sure. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, if Cleveland's fully locked and loaded, I think they are a better team on paper, slightly, just because of that offensive line superiority they have. But I think the division odds, once the last few reports broke about Watson, their odds to win the North have gone down. And you don't have much to go off of. What do you expect? But you kind of figure the odds makers, the bookmakers, might have a little intel, a little information that we don't, to set those lines.
Yeah, and it's a tough really tough year to kind of have to be going through all this stuff. And I think the odds have kind of been leaning a little bit more towards the Ravens. I think there is like just respect factors that go into that. So you look at Lamar Jackson, you look at John Harbaugh has been in there forever. But they're still there. The Bengals are still very much there. I think they only got better. So, the idea that the Browns are just going to waltz to the division title, even with Watson, was going to be a tough proposition.
Yeah.
So they better hope that that Brissett can really win them some games, to your point there.
Oh yeah, it was going to be a bad. I mean, it's a tough division, one of the best divisions. And just while we're on the topic, Cincy, it depends. Do those defensive guys they acquired last year, can they repeat their breakout seasons? That's really the big question. Wouzier, the corner who had a breakout season, and their edge rusher, I forget his name, Hendrickson, not Hendrickson. What's his name? Yeah.
No,
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, so they've got some question marks their own way as well. And it's just an interesting division to me for a lot of different reasons, but that is chief among them. So Baker Mayfield, goodbye. We hardly knew you. I mean, I just a little bit of a eulogy for that guy's time in Cleveland, where he's posing with the fucking tiger with no shirt on, and he's like doing the GQ thing where he's biting the chain, and he's this guy's gonna win MVP. It's just the whole thing was, and I have nothing against Baker Mayfield personally. I hope he Browns, I think at Panthers in Week 1. I hope he shoves it up their ass after they treated him the way that they did to an extent, but just kind of a funny sort of fall from grace for a guy who his head maybe got a little too big for him at times.
Oh yeah, the nonstop at commercials and sponsorship deals. Well, I'm not sure how many commercials he's going to be on this year.
Yeah, that's always a tough look, and it's like the problem is they like buy the ad load before the season, and they just like, all right, we got to do it. We're doing this all the way through Week 18, and when he's just like struggling throughout that 2019 season or even last year, for example, it's like, all right, how many like Baker like progressive commercials where he's like, hitting on flow with John Hamm, and it's like, what's going on here? How much of that do I have? What's going on here? But yeah, to your point, I think hopefully they found a way to get somebody to eat that contract or just took it to a shredder, because that's a tough scene for progressive.
Yeah, no doubt.
Okay, so I guess that is that. Last thing we had on the docket here was Benjamin and I have been doing these little just kind of positional reviews, kind of priming the pump, as it were, for training camp, which is, I think, about exactly a month away, maybe even a little bit less if you're counting the early reports. But we have gone through
less. Yeah, 27th.
Yeah, there you go. So yeah, 3 weeks from now. So I believe we did wide receiver. I could be wrong on that. Maybe not yet, but we did do tight ends and running backs most recently. And yeah, I think we did QB and wide receiver as well. So yeah, here we are at offensive line. And I asked Cole to come on. I think he had some daddy duties or something like that. Didn't respond to my my DM where we were working the timeout. So Cole, suck it. And yeah. We'll get him on. We'll get him on soon to talk some offensive line. But this would have been perfect for him. But you know what? We can cover it just fine, can't we? So yeah, jumping into this offensive line. What is the first word that comes to your mind when I bring up the 2022 Baltimore Ravens offensive line?
Improved. I would say improved is the first word, and a lot's been made of it. It's been a priority. Everyone was talking about it at the end of the season. Everyone's been talking about it since, and sometimes some use the improved offensive line to paper over potentially other issues that I don't necessarily agree with, but I do think that they are improved for no other reason than they have at least one dependable league average offensive tackle. And we've seen Lamar Jackson when Ronnie Stanley suffered his first injury in 2020, when Orlando Brown went to the left side and then decided he was a left tackle. The right tackle situation was not great, with DJ Fluker and Tyree Phillips rotating on a drive-by-drive basis. And Lamar still executed a very effective offense that year because he's that elusive that he can elude pressure coming from one side. But last season, when it was coming from both sides, it was just too much to bear.
Yeah, definitely. I think it was that was really the nadir of kind of like, we're just going to like try to hope that it all works out along the offensive line. And, they made those additions at wide receiver, which you're all clamoring for. And I think they were the right moves in certain contexts, but,
they were in first place, even with the bad O-line last year.
Yeah, exactly. So that's just simple economics. You make one, fix somewhere when you're in a salary cap situation that's going to kind of by default hurt other things. I think for me, my reaction to the moves they've made is I'm glad that they didn't kind of overcommit to fixing it. Like Kansas City obviously had a great season last year, and I think part of that was due to their revamped offensive line, but they just made so many moves and threw so much money at it, and it didn't result in even a Super Bowl appearance. And it probably, could have, you could argue it should have, but it just kind of like it to me, it felt like they were kind of getting a little too cute and saying, like, all right, we're just going to fix all this in one offseason. And because we have Patrick Mahomes, everything's going to work out. And because they have Patrick Mahomes, it's pretty much almost always going to work out. And it didn't this year. So I don't know. I'm kind of glad that they didn't go that route. They made a couple moves that weren't necessarily like hedges, but they were just safe moves that weren't going to cost them too much. But that's just sort of where I'm at with it. They didn't fully commit to it. They left themselves some wiggle room to make moves elsewhere, but it feels like they're in a pretty good spot where, yes, you're banking on a little bit of an if with this Ronnie Stanley ankle situation, but everything else looks pretty darn good. And even if he does have to miss time, I think they're in a solid enough spot where they can kick guys around a little bit and feel okay. So I guess we can start there at left tackle with Ronnie Stanley. Where are you at with him? How do you feel about this, relative gamble that they're taking on him?
So it seems like they're putting out positive vibes from the castle about Ronnie, and we don't know if he's going to be ready. Week one, we don't know. It could be still could be a career-ending, knock on wood, injury. If he does come back and he's ready, I'm not sure that you're getting all-pro Ronnie Stanley. At least off the bat, he's got almost a season and a half of rust to knock off. Who knows what kind of shape that ankle's in? Will that ankle ever be what it once was? Probably not. But if you have Ronnie Stanley at a Pro Bowl level, that's a whole lot better than your other options, even if he's not quite at an All-Pro level.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, honestly, that's probably where their head is at. If they're like, if we get 85, 90% of this guy, maybe even just 80, like that's probably good enough to have a pretty damn good starting left tackle. And yeah, he'll be paid probably to be a little bit more than that, but it's just kind of the rub of the green. If you get any football out of him after kind of what we've seen the last couple of years, and it's good, like that's kind of an objective win to me because you can't really get out of that contract. You kind of just got to take what you can get. So they're pretty much
years at least, yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty much doing all they can do, and yeah, at least we are hearing positive things from it to the point where like Rappaport is tweeting that surgeries went well and rehab is coming along, and he plans to play like as far back as like at the end of last year, I remember. So very good to hear all that, but it's just a wait and see, right? I mean, and that's tough when your backup left tackle, looking at the depth chart right now, Patrick McCary and then Jared Jones-Smith. I like myself a nice hyphenated last name, but that's kind
of apparently he's flashed a little bit. I think Juwan James is the backup left tackle.
So he was. So we can jump into him. He's listed it right. And then I'm kind of thinking like if Ronnie does have to miss time, and let's say he plays a couple games or maybe like a month, and if he has to miss time, I'm kind of wondering about the feasibility of Morgan Moses at left tackle and then Falele or whoever else at right, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think Moses has played sparingly occasionally at left on the left side. He's not one of those guys that only has the feet to do one side. But apparently James was running with the first team at left tackle at minicamp. I wasn't out there, but that's the word on the street is that, and he was a damn good player. He was a really, really solid player 3 years ago now. But that's kind of where I'm at. They're very deep and they have a lot of options. And sometimes you just kind of throw a bunch of different guys at the wall and see who sticks. And usually more times than not, somebody will. I'm usually pretty comfortable in those situations, more than when you only throw two things at the wall and hope that they both stick.
Yeah, and I mean, for whatever it's worth, what little we kind of do hear out of the castle is that they love Juwan James's attitude and they want to reward him with his hard work and good attitude for at least an opportunity. And like an opportunity to me should constitute like, yeah, get him out there in training camp, get him the reps and let him try to like show what he can do because he's making like literally nothing. Like it's Joe Biden, benefits everybody, hurts nobody. It's good for the economy. Like let him get out there and try to show what he can do because he has put in the work and he is pretty much nothing for you on the books. So I'm liking the idea of some Juwan James and I mean McCary too. I mean McCary's done it as well. He's very, very versatile and he's being paid to be a solid swing tackle. So I think he's another option there as well.
Yeah, McCary, when he had to kick out to right tackle last year, there was a big controversy of how is he going to hold up with his arm length, and he's just a really scrappy. He's just a fighter, and he uses his feet and his body to overcome some of his physical limitations. I'm pretty comfortable with him at right tackle, right guard, center, or left guard. Not quite there with him at left tackle, but in a pinch, if you had to, I think he can with in a Lamar Jackson led offense who gives those tackles such an advantage. I think he could survive out there, and he's a good guy to have. I mean, maybe he's a little bit expensive for an offensive lineman that's not penciled in as a starter right now, but considering how important the offensive line is to the overall success of the team, I'm pretty. I think it's a good insurance policy to have a high-paid, quality 6 offensive lineman.
Yeah, and I think to the point that people sometimes take issue with is the idea that they do kind of build this offense for Greg Roman as much as they do for Lamar. And the fact that you do get these jumbo packages and you do get this 6 offensive linemen in there a good bit, having a guy like McCary in the mix, I think that's a pretty big thing to have. So even if they are paying him a little bit extra, I think I'm okay with that. Just like I'm more or less okay with the idea of bringing back Ricard.
Yeah, I don't think you can overdo it. You can't have the highest paid blocking tight end and the highest paid fullback and the highest paid, 6 linemen. At some point, an efficiency becomes an inefficiency when you overdo it, and that really gets into a discussion about premium positions that we don't want to have tonight.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong that we don't have it, but yeah, like it feels like sink or swim this year, my man. Something is going to give, I think, and yeah, you're not wrong that there is certainly a potential overinvestment in that regard. So I guess that's all the guys. We haven't really touched on Dan Falele too much. So what do you think about this guy who, in a couple years, after a devastating injury to Ronnie Stanley, is going to step in at left tackle, develop an egotistical complex, and then tweet that he's a left tackle and be traded somewhere else? Daniel Falele.
I mean, I think that's all just folds neatly into the contend every season. Let him play him for 3 years, then flip him for a first, and then rinse and repeat. You're going to be a wild card divisional round for life. No, I think he's a little bit of a project, and apparently he needs to get his conditioning in shape. He might have the physical dimensions of Orlando Brown, but he didn't have the technique. I mean, Leonard Brown was an All-American at Oklahoma, even though he went around the similar draft range. So I think he's the ideal guy for the jumbo package. Actually, that's the guy you want to stick on the end of the line and knock somebody's block off. So I think he's more or less probably going to be more of a redshirt year, but maybe he comes into camp with a newfound body composition and is ready to roll. Again, I would still prefer a natural tackle with his dimensions and length and physicality to, a Tyree Phillips trying to play right tackle or the very last days of Villanueva.
Yeah, and it felt like a gamble worth taking, right? Like they were in the 4th round and he just kind of fell to their lap. So they hadn't found a good value proposition, to your point there, earlier in the draft. So he's there. Of course, you go and grab him, and just feels like, kind of to your point, that perfect developmental idea. He's not a guy that you want to see getting a ton of run in a starting role this year for any reason, much less the idea that he's going to have to. So yeah, I mean, get him involved in those jumbo packages, give him the ball. I've been advocating for. He did that a little bit in college, former rugby player. So, just an absolute load and going to be tough to bring down in the AFC North. So give him some Tyree Phillips, little, kind of razzle dazzle, get the ball in his hands. I like the idea of that with Falele. We can jump into the interior here.
Well, there you go with the jumbo packages. What were your thoughts on Moses though, Jake? I didn't.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's just like the perfect, like it's kind of the overall encapsulation of what I was talking about that they did with this offensive line, where it felt like they didn't make an over-investment move, but they just like they always do, and
stopgap.
Yeah, stopgap, like that, and in a good way. Like they found a good, inexpensive option, and a guy who, like I said, I'd probably be comfortable with kicking to left tackle for a game or two if need be. I love the idea of him at right tackle, and another just good attitude guy. Like video coming out of it the other day, like talking the guys through practice or whatever. I didn't get to watch the full thing, but just taking that leadership role, just he's going to fit in well with Harbaugh, I think, which is always a good thing. So yeah, that's my Morgan Moses take. So interior, You mentioned Tyree Phillips a little bit. He is listed as the starter at left guard. Ben Powers behind him. So what do we think about that left guard spot?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of people want Ben Cleveland to win that job. And maybe I think it's a little bit of a bias towards, for some reason, the really big guys always end up in Harbaugh's doghouse in the summertime. No idea why. I don't think it has anything to do with the humidity or anything like that. No, Orlando Brown, we saw that where he was running with the second team in 2019.
It has to be conditioning. Like Harbaugh is like making them do laps, and like the bigger guys just can't hang, and he's like, oh, "Fuck these guys!" Like, and he's just
put them on the third team.
Put them in the doghouse, make them like catch punt returns, and then everyone can go home if they catch it. That kind of thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be a real battle. That's the one really wide open spot, and you have three guys at least. And I don't want to speak for Cole, but I've talked to him about it. It's funny that Ben Cleveland has his reputation as a mauler because he's not the power road grading run blocker, but he's actually really good in pass pro. And Phillips maybe is a combination of both. And even if Jawan James or Falele, I mean, most of the time, if you're good enough to play tackle, you can kick inside the guard and be pretty good too. So a lot of options there. Powers might be maybe the interesting guy to talk about just because is there going to be a spot on this roster for him? I've, I guess, been somewhat of a Ben Powers defender just because I think he's pretty much an average guard, and some teams don't have average guards. So if you think you're deep enough, and maybe even McCary gets into the battle there too, if you think you're good enough, maybe you can flip him for a 5th round pick or something this training camp. But they're really deep, they're really deep across the line, which is a place they haven't necessarily been. DaCosta called it shallow depth. Was that 2 years ago? Now it feels like they have deep depth.
Yeah, there you go. It's the iceberg, the picture. The picture of the iceberg going down. It's actually deep. It's not like just
so deep.
Yeah, exactly. It's very deep. But yeah, I mean, you raise an interesting point there about Hagegod to him, and maybe he could be a trade chip, but I don't know. Like they sold low on Ben Bredesen, and I don't know if they totally would remake that move again because he did some things for the Giants.
He was starting. He started at least half the games, I think.
Yeah, I think he was like in there early too. So Ben Powers obviously not the same player, but it's Tyree Phillips is the starter right now. Ben Cleveland, they're going to want him to win the job, but all the things that you mentioned, including, again, not like reporting anything, but just he apparently needs to get his head in the playbook a little bit more. So let's have him do that and have him win that job because I think they've wanted that since they picked him in the 3rd round. That is a significant investment. So you're going to want him there. And then at right guard, obviously Kevin Zeitler, not really a ton to say on him. I mean, he's just kind of, they signed him last year. He exceeded expectations. I think if he at least plays to the expectations they had him for this year, then they're in a really good spot with him and at that right guard position. And he's not even really that old. I think he's like 32. So some threat on the tires, but a really good spot to be in at right guard.
I think you can make a strong case that the acquisition of Zeitler is one of DaCosta's best moves that he's made as GM, along with Marcus Peters and maybe a couple other things that I'm not thinking of. But yeah, he played at a Pro Bowl level. He never made a Pro Bowl, but he's that kind of player, 1st round pick. They're a right-handed rushing team, so that right guard is, more of a premium player or an important position. Obviously, Yanda locked it down for so many years, and he's the anchor. He's with considering Ronnie's injury, I mean, he's your best lineman right now, and he's that veteran presence that you want. And, with hopefully better play on his right side, they can really dominate on the ground like they did for second half of 2018, all of 2019 and all of 2020.
Yeah, definitely. And that's really going to be a nice thing to have there. So I guess coming up the middle, we got a rookie starting. And in Tyler Linderbaum, he's listed as a starter ahead of Tristan Colon, who's kind of another one of those swing guys. I feel like that they do like him still a good bit, and then Jimmy Murray, who I am not super familiar with.
You don't know Jimmy Murray? Good idea.
I can't say that I do. I'm more of a Jamal guy.
So we have my guy Garnett, one of my good favorite guys, and he's talking about Tyree Phillips and Ben Cleveland battle will be legit. Completely agree. The one thing that I diverged on him with is Linderbaum. He loved Linderbaum in the draft. He wanted Linderbaum at 14. I wasn't as high on him. And I don't know if it's PTSD from Jeremy Zuta and Gino Gradkowski. I just don't really like undersized centers. So he's billed as a generational center. We've seen guys with that billing fail. We've seen guys with that billing dominate. So I think he's going to be a good player. I'm not sure he's going to be an elite dominant guy. The question to me is, how much is the scheme going to change to really utilize his, his zone blocking center. Really, that's where his real value is, as far as, and also climbing to the second level. But it's interesting because they were one of the least. They ran some of the least zone, at least if I recall what Cole was saying, of most of the teams. So I'm not sure that he necessarily has the anchor, being a little bit undersized, to hold up against those big nose tackles that are bull rushing him. So he's more side to side than forward and backwards kind of player. So how does that change things? We'll see. But I think he's going to have a good year, but I don't think he's necessarily going to be an all on the all pro team as a rookie.
Yeah, I think he's going to have a good year this year, and maybe to your chagrin a little bit, I look at it more as another one of those long-term picks where good year this year, and then I'm thinking like all pro. Like I think he's going to be that guy. I've come around to him, and I didn't really have much of an opinion on him because I just didn't think that he was going to be in the mix for them at 14. I thought he would go late first round, and then what happens? They trade into the late first round and they get him. So I think it worked out pretty good in that I think he is going to be a good player this year. And I believe in the intangibles. I believe in the Kirk Ferentz word of approval when it comes to offensive linemen. He's got a little bit of an it factor. He's got a little bit of, same with Kyle Hamilton on the defensive side of the ball. I think he's got a little bit of the kid in him. I think he might be the kid, at least as far as offensive linemen go. So I like him for the fact that very mobile, to your point. It's maybe a little bit more of an east-west than a north-south type thing, but I don't know. If anyone can make offensive line play work, it's this team to me. It's Joe D'Alessandris. It's Greg Roman. It's Lamar Jackson making things easier for you. So I don't know. I really like where they're at with center with him. And then obviously you got Cologne there if he faces some injuries, but he's already listed as a starter on the depth chart. That is not nothing for a rookie. And I don't know. I'm into it. I understand some of the hesitations, but I'm willing to take them on faith at this position group.
Yeah, to clarify, he's a technician. He's a former wrestler. He understands leverage. To me, that gives him a high floor, even though he's undersized. I'm just not quite convinced he has this uber high, awesome ceiling. And I hope I'm wrong. And then McCary, again, McCary is he's the jack of all trades. I think if you have an injury anywhere, you plug him in. Really, he's the first man up anywhere, unless he's a starting left guard.
Yeah, no, and I think, McCary obviously has got that versatility. He's going to be able to do that, and we're going to see with Linderbaum, but cautiously optimistic. I think on both of our fronts, but maybe a little bit more me. Anything else on this offensive line, my friend?
I don't think they're necessarily going to replicate the 2019 group. I think Yanda was maybe just a half a step better than Zeitler. Orlando Brown was a half a step or just a slightly better than Moses, and a healthy Ronnie versus an injured Ronnie or rehabbing Ronnie. But I do think they have the chops to be a top 12, top 10, maybe O-line, maybe even better than that. And I think that's enough. I think that's good enough as long as the other pieces around them on offense aren't putting too much pressure on them to carry, to boost, to buoy the entire offense.
Absolutely. I think I'm right there with you. I'm expecting kind of just a regression to where they usually are. And, maybe they're usually a little bit higher than that, but who knows? I think they're going to settle right into that top 10 range. And if they're better than that, then they're going to be in a good spot. And to the point that we kind of alluded to, but don't want to fully get into. If they make a solid move at wide receiver, then this offense is looking really damn good to me because you overinvested potentially at tight end. You got the best fullback in the league. You got a great stable of running backs and a very good offensive line, I think. So just make that move and we're all going to be very happy. So
the whole entire team will be sitting pretty. I think I'd like their odds on against any team on any field in any weather, any game script. They could do anything. They can counter any scheme on defense. They have the pieces. On offense, they still need that one piece to be able to have the ultimate versatility.
Yep. Shout out to Zach Wilson's headband. That's all I got for tonight, pal.
I appreciate it. Yeah, that sounds great. Happy to had to warm up the arm a little bit. Getting a little stiff in the bullpen, but when Spenny, he got knocked around a little bit early in the first, and he had to call me in.
Yeah, he did. He had one of those performances where he just goes out there and he's a couple loud outs, and then he's just giving up all these shots into left and right and all over the place, and then a couple homers, and he's yanked. No, he's actually he's at the beach. I don't know. He's vacationing, doing the whole Spenjamin thing, and assuredly having himself a great time. If you missed his performance on WBAL, by the way, go and check out friend of the show Pete. Just kind of randomly ran into him and a couple of his friends and his girlfriend walking into Camden Yards. So he made his maiden voyage on the trip on WBAL. So check that out if you haven't already. It's a great couple second clip of him maybe hamming it up for the camera a little bit. He and I talked about that, but the line that he wanted to get in there actually didn't get in there. So if you want that, feel free to reach out to him, DM him at Ravens4Dummies. But
best thing I saw all week. That was the best thing I saw all week last week.
Yeah, it was very good. And shout out to Pete for putting that out there and blasting it out. Pete, we got to get him back on the show at some point too. That remind me to shoot him a text. But just things coming together here as training camp is around the corner. So thank you for hopping in out of the bullpen tonight, bud. It's always great to chat with you. And we'll be sure to do it again soon. Where can the people find you and your stuff?
So I am at Baltimore Beatdown. I'm the co-managing editor, and you can find me on Twitter at Vasilis Beatdown, Vasilis Beatdown, and I will debate you about the need for wide receivers for 4 days if you keep the conversation going.
Yeah, I mean, actually longer than that, probably. Like it's a little bit of a limit does not exist situation there. But you can find me at Jake Luke. That's LOUQUE on Twitter, and check out our podcast at Podcast Beatdown on Twitter, where we tweet out all sorts of nonsense and show promotional materials if you're into that sort of thing. Thank you guys for listening. We'll talk to you again next week. See ya. Arrivederci.
Where is the wise man? Where is the scholar? Where is the philosopher of this age? Get down! Baltimore!
What are they getting? Everything out of me. They gonna get a Super Bowl out of me. Believe that.